I'm Mocha, and this is Stories from Before. Young love is something else, isn't it? Unreasonable, furious, and intense. Makes you crazy. Makes you do things you ordinarily never would. Two people in love can be one of the most beautiful things in the world, or it can be a catastrophe. I certainly wonder which tonight's tale will be, for tonight we venture into the realm of romance. So sit back and relax while your girl regales you with tales of old. Hush, it's beginning. Long ago in a far-off land, in a kingdom mighty and bold, there lived a princess, a fiery little princess with dark hair and eyes like jade. The princess was a joy to behold, beautiful and kind to all her subjects, and while the people may have taken issue with their king from time to time, well, no one ever uttered a bad word about the princess. I think she sounds interesting. Don't have a good name for her yet. Let's wait until we hear a little more. The princess was a treasure to her people, and whether it was her father, her mother, her subjects, or the servants who tended her needs day and night, all loved their beautiful princess. She became revered for her kindness, and across the land saints and nuns desired to reward her with the title of Saint of the Heart Overflowing. Oh, okay. I like her a lot. I'm going with the name Dorian, a lovely name for a lovely princess. Such was her fate, and she accepted their praise gladly. And then the princess met a beautiful young man who caught her eyes. He had dark hair and a voice like the depths of the ocean. He spoke in rolling tones and an accent that made him seem wild and unique amongst his peers. The young man was a student in the country on apprenticeship to learn the ways of her people and the ways of the bard. He played his songs in the local tavern and gained such a reputation for his voice and music that he was brought before the royal court. What a charming, talented young man! Let's call him Brian. That's a nice, strong name. Yeah, Brian. Brian came before the court and played his best songs. He fingered and sang notes of such passion and feeling that the king himself was moved to tears. Dorian herself felt a tug at her heartstrings, but it was not from the pull of the singing. The tug on her heart was from the beautiful young man. After his performance, Brian was celebrated, the people of the kingdom overjoyed to have yet another talent among their midst. The princess congratulated him personally, and because she was so beautiful and kind, the two began to talk to one another. The pair talked with one another long into the night, sharing secrets and stories, and experiencing the joys of relating to one another. It wasn't until late that the king insisted visitors leave the palace and that the young bard take his leave. The princess and the bard said their goodbyes and parted ways, Brian promising to visit again at some point. He returned to the home of his master and rested fitfully through the night. Yet while he slept, the princess remained awake, haunted by his beauty, his talent, and his lovely personality. Oh no, Dorian has it bad for Brian. Maybe they get together? So it came that the next day, when Brian went to the tavern to play, he found young Dorian awaiting him. He thought little of it, happy that she would come into town among her people to enjoy the day with them. So he sang her a song of a beautiful young princess, dutiful and radiant like the sun setting gently over rolling waves. "Oh, that's such a beautiful comparison. He's so sweet. It's official. I ship it." Dorian was flattered, stunned that the young man would write such kindnesses about her. His words sang to her very being. The men and women in the tavern were struck with affection for their perfect princess and fawned over her all throughout the evening. The men and women in the tavern were struck with affection for their perfect princess, and fawned over her all throughout the evening, spurred on by his beautiful singing. Such was their fervor that the princess found herself unable to meet with Brian when finally he turned in for the night, leaving the tavern. Not wanting to be rude, Dorian did not follow him to the home he shared with his master. Instead, she returned to the castle. However, the next morning, Brian woke and left his door, only to find himself staring into the face of the princess. A man of good poise, he bowed low and properly greeted the royalty before him. But Dorian bade him stand. Brian was happy to find that the princess had appreciated his songs and told her that he truly appreciated her coming to see his work. The princess, taken with him and smitten, asked him to attend a dinner with her rather than performing that evening. Brian, startled but no fool, agreed. He left to inform his master and the people that he would not be playing that evening. Dorian held herself, imagining his arms around her. That seems a bit quick." Dorian returned to the palace, her spirits high and her heart aflutter. She planned out a perfect night for herself and the dashing bard. She asked the cooks to prepare the most fantastic dinner for two, sending for the extra cooks to ensure the meal came out well. A separate dining space overlooking the gardens was prepared for them. The princess even asked for her dear father to find other accommodations, something which had never happened before this day. The entire palace was made aware that the young princess had finally set her eyes on some young suitor. Beloved as the princess was, they were eager and happy to support her. When he arrived at the palace, ready to discuss whatever the princess had in mind, young Brian found himself staring into the eyes of a star-struck woman. She led him by his hand to their private eating area. Confused as he was, the bard was not without manner or tact. He dined with the young princess, smiling brightly and entertaining her with stories of his apprenticeship. She listened, giving him her utmost attention. Every word he gave her she treasured, and she found herself forgetting to eat on multiple occasions. How cute! I can only imagine being so love-struck. After the two had finished eating, rather than allowing the boy to steal away into the night, Dorian took him with her into the gardens. Brian became nervous, fairly certain he knew where the evening was headed. He did not hate the princess, but he did not love her. He was fond of her and thought her a wonderful person for her people, just not for him. I've been there before. Not sure you can let her down easy when she's like that, Brian. Sensing his nerves, the princess thought to ease his worries. She held him close, leaning in to plant the kiss that she knew would seal the beginning of their romance. And yet, when her eyes fluttered back open, she found those very lips pressed to his fingers, fear upon his face. At first the princess was confused, then her confusion turned to sadness, and then to anger and embarrassment. He was rejecting her. He didn't love her as she did him. Her emotions roiled like an envenomed serpent, thrashing and coiling upon themselves as the princess experienced rejection for the first time in her life. Oh no, I had my fingers crossed that this one would end well, but I'm not seeing that happening. The princess wailed in despair, incapable of understanding how someone could not love her, not share her own feelings. Her distress was such that the guards and serfs all rushed to her side. The people tried to comfort their princess, but she was insensate. Her distress caused such a ruckus in the palace that the young bard was put to point of sword and almost sent to the dungeons for harming the royal family. Only when she noticed through her tears that her beloved bard was in danger did the princess calm down enough to stop the guards. Unable to articulate her feelings, she threw herself before the blade, protecting the man with her body, and cried. That is so weird. The story is all fuzzy here. I guess I'll have to have one of my friends take a look at it, and I'll get back to you. These old things are delicate. For now, well, that was our story for tonight. Will Dory actually convince Brian that she's worthy of his love? Will everything fall apart? Find out next week when I do. So, did you like our story tonight? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Join me again next week and I'll tell you another. Until then, all eyes on you, sweetie.